I want to make a few comments. First of all, those of you especially who are in leadership positions, are faced with literally the best of times and the worst of times. You are having to wrestle with budget deficits, possibly friends, family, as well as constituents who are losing their jobs, who are losing their homes, people who've worked hard every year, sometimes 2 jobs, sometimes 6 days a week, sometimes 7, who now are losing their pensions, whose 401ks are disappearing, and they are looking for answers. And you are looking for answers. How are we going to revive this economy? How are we going to put people back to work? Is there some way that we can turn this breakdown into a breakthrough? Is there some way that we can actually take what is happening and find some way to an actual better economy than we had? Is there some way that we can actually have more work and more wealth and better health in some other arrangement than we had in the arrangement that is now falling apart? If we can do that, then we will achieve something quite extraordinary. And I think that we can. But the key to it is to understand why we're falling. Where did the breakdown come from? And then what do green jobs and clean energy have to do with that breakthrough? We're falling for 3 reasons. The breakdown is a result of 3 fallacies. And folks in California love to blame President Bush for everything that's wrong in the country. If we're going to be honest with ourselves, we've been on a particular trajectory, not for 8 years, but for 30. And not one political party, but both political parties were enthusiastic about an economic model that turned out to have 3 major fallacies in it. So if we're going to fix it, both parties have to step up to the plate, all branches of government, all levels of government, and recognize that we have to move in a different direction. What were those 3 fallacies? Number 1, the fallacy that we could build our economy and run our economy forever based on consumption primarily rather than production. That we could be the number 1 economy in the world, not because we're the number 1 producer, but because we're the number 1 consumer. And both political parties for about 30 years were enthusiastic about us, for some reason, sending jobs overseas. And we don't need factories, we don't need production, we don't need manufacturing, we'll just send all that stuff overseas, God bless them, and we'll run our economy based on shopping online, going to the mall, and selling lattes. That would somehow go on forever, and we would be the strongest economy in the world. Well, it turned out that wasn't true. And not only is our country suffering, but frankly, even China now is suffering. Our sisters and brothers in China that built their whole economy on the idea that we just keep buying stuff from them forever and not make anything, now they're going through economic trouble. So it was a bad idea for both countries. That was the first fallacy. The second fallacy, the idea that we could go on forever having an economy based on credit and debt rather than smart savings and thrift like our grandparents. We could just build the economy up on credit cards. We'd be able to have an economy based on borrowing rather than building, based on credit from overseas rather than U.S. creativity. And that could just go on forever. And we all fell victim to it. For a while, if you open up your mailbox, credit cards just come flying out at you. You almost, you just, must go to mall, it's just, just, hey, and I don't care who you are, if your great-grandmother were to come back and see your credit card statement versus your savings account, you would get sent to timeout or get a whooping or whatever is culturally appropriate for you, you would get in trouble. Because that's not how it used to be. It used to be we had to save before we bought. All these things that seem antiquated now with how we built this country. And we got away from that. And we wound up with a country where our sisters and brothers in China, God bless them, spend too little and actually save too much and always have a big stack of cash looking for somebody to lend it to. And God bless them for that. But then we spend too much and save too little. So we're always walking around with a big stack of credit cards looking for somebody to borrow from. And that cycle of us borrowing from overseas fueled this huge bubble where we had people hawking their homes to buy flat screen TVs to cover the holes in our lives. And both parties thought that this could go on forever. And both parties were wrong. And it was bad again for both countries. The third fallacy was the idea that we could go on forever running our economy based on ecological destruction and disrespecting God's creation, as opposed to ecological restoration and honoring God's creation. And both parties thought that was a great idea. We could just go on forever, taking beautiful living systems, beautiful living creatures, clear-cutting them, chopping them down, killing them, shrink-wrapping them, turning them into products, and then shoving them through the consumer cycle, getting them into malls and homes and out the back, into incinerators, into landfills, and doing that as fast as we could over and over and over again, turning living things into dead products at breakneck speed and calling that growth. And that we would never pay a cost, that we would never have to count what counts. We never have to count carbon. That's off the books. It's free to me and you to drive around, dump the carbon out the back of our cars. But it's going to cost us, according to the world scientists, the whole planet. Right? In economics terms, that's called a market failure, right? But you know, we never have to balance those books. Those are the three fallacies: consumption over production, credit over savings and thrift, and ecological destruction over ecological restoration that define the economy that just collapsed. That is the economy that just collapsed. That is the gray economy. That is the economy the time is up for that. We're not going to be able, no matter what we do, to restart that old way. And that's the bad news. Here's the good news. The reverse of that economy, back to local production, back to thrift and conservation, and back to ecological restoration. That economy is called the green economy, and that economy is rising. Here in Texas, the renewable companies been growing at 44%, started to flatline a little bit this quarter, but the last one's to come down. 130% job growth. Even as the old economy crashes, there's a new economy that's rising, even before our eyes. The question is, how do we make this green economy work, and why is it so promising, especially here in Texas? I'll tell you why. Because we have got to get back to producing something in this country. We can't go on as the #1 consumer without producing something. And there is one thing we can produce in this country that we have not been producing, and that is clean energy, homegrown clean energy. We have a Saudi Arabia of wind energy right here in this country, a large proportion of that right here in Texas. We have a Saudi Arabia of solar power in this country, both in the Sun Belt and on rooftops from coast to coast. What we haven't done as a country, though, is to recognize that resource, that homegrown resource, and connect all those power centers to our population centers. If you had to lay out what is the most simple way to give the challenge that we face as a country, it's just that. Connect our clean energy power centers to our population centers and start running this country more on clean energy. If we did that, we would have a tremendous breakthrough. Why? Because just to take three technologies, wind, solar, and energy efficiency, I'll talk about those three, and then I'll move to my close. But to go into just those three, and doesn't anywhere near exhaust the categories we could talk about. But just doing those three things right and producing the materials to do so here in this country could create, depending on who you talk to, between 4 to 8 million jobs in the United States. 4 to 8 million jobs in the United States. And these are not government jobs, these are private sector jobs. Tremendous economic opportunity. Why is that? The reason that we have not gotten our brains wrapped around this is because we've been living with a false distinction for at least 40 years. That you could either do well by the economy or you could do well by the environment. If you, as my friend was up here saying, if you want to respect the environment, don't produce anything. Everybody just stand still. You know, the birds will be happy, but we won't be. Right? Like that's Or don't worry about the environment. Just produce, and pollute all you want to, and but at least you'll have a high GNP. You'll have a lot of cancer, a lot of asthma, maybe have no planet, but you'll have a lot of dollars. And this was considered a conversation worth debating. It's like, well, which one should we do? Should we have money in our pockets for our kids and possibly kill off our grandkids? Or should we be so concerned about our grandkids that we don't feed our children? Like, this was what we did for a long time, right? Here's the truth. Everything that is good for the environment is a job. Everything that's good in the fight against global warming is a job. Solar panels don't put themselves up. Wind turbines don't manufacture themselves. Homes don't retrofit themselves or weatherize themselves. Everything that needs to be done to retrofit this country, to repower this country, to reboot us, to help us be the strongest economy in the world again, as a clean energy leader in the world, is a job, it's a career, it's an entrepreneurial opportunity, it's a contract. And you're talking about thousands of contracts and millions of jobs. So what we've got to be able to do then is to lean forward into the opportunity. What are the opportunities? Let's talk about wind, which is something obviously Texas has a head start in. But it can never be underscored enough. When you talk about wind and tapping wind resources, you're talking about a tremendous number of jobs. And not just jobs putting up the wind turbines, making the wind turbines. Now, I go around the country and talk about this stuff, and I realized that for a long time, Senator, when I talked about wind turbines, I knew what I was talking about, but other people didn't. Now, when I say wind turbines, how many of you guys have children? How many have kids? How many of you, when I say wind turbines, think windmill? Right? Right? See, I understand, because you have these little children, and they're small, and you're reading to them. And, you open the little book, and it says, oh, well, what's that, Mommy? Oh, well, this is a lamb, And say, oh, lamb. And you turn the page and say, oh, what's that? Oh, that's a pig. Oh, pig. And then sometimes they ask, and what's that in the background? And they don't say background, they say, what's that there, And you say, oh, that's a windmill, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about windmills, okay? I wouldn't be this excited about windmills. I'm talking about wind turbines. Imagine a jet engine in the sky, right? That can turn a little breeze into raw power. Each one of those wind turbines has 8,000 finely machined parts in it. 8,000. That's a car. That's a car, okay? When you put them up, they don't sit up on little wooden things like the wind turbine. 20 tons of steel, those towers. That means you could put your auto workers back to work, not making SUVs that might cook the planet, but making wind turbines that could save the planet. You could put your steel workers back to work, you see, just tapping the wind resources of this country. See. Now, imagine if there were places in Texas that using clean production technology became the new Detroit. Now, my friends in Michigan will be mad at me for mentioning this, but hopefully they won't see the video. I gotta go talk to them in 2 weeks. But you say, well, why would anybody do that in Texas? They make so much, they make cars overseas. Why don't they make the wind turbines overseas? Well, it turns out that because that stuff is so heavy, those huge blades are so heavy and so cumbersome, it's a lot better to make them close to where they're gonna go up. Right? Now, you guys know that in Texas, you've been focused on that, but you can't underscore it enough, that it's not just putting those turbines up, the green manufacturing process to make them, jobs all the way. Let's talk about solar. When you think about solar power, something bad has happened here in Texas where you guys are leading in wind and then trailing in solar, which makes no sense. New Jersey, not the sunniest place in America, is beating you in solar. Now, that makes no sense at all. Now, you think to yourself, well, we have our renewable portfolio standard, and it turned out that when you put that together, wind was more cost competitive and wind was able to outperform, and so now you don't have a renewable portfolio standard, you basically just have wind. Good. But you can ask the people who invested all their money with Madoff, right, how smart it is to put all your eggs in one basket. The energy security of Texas and this country requires that we begin to diversify and diversify aggressively, especially when you have the kind of solar resources that you have here. Now, the other thing about solar is if you can get out in front of it, there's a mayor in Chicago named Daley. And he is in Chicago, again, not Berkeley, where I'm from, or where I'm close to. I'm from Oakland, but right next door to Berkeley. In Chicago, he says, listen, we're going to do solar, but here's how we're going to do solar. Our city is going to purchase solar power. We're going to incentivize, but we're not going to put a penny on the table for any solar panel that wasn't manufactured and fabricated in Chicago. That's how they do in Chicago. You may have noticed they have different kind of politics in Illinois. But there's an upside. And here's the upside. He meant it. And solar panel manufacturers came from around the world to Chicago. And they set up shop because he said, if you're 2 inches outside the city limits, I won't deal with you. So they came to Chicago. They used the purchasing power of government, is what I'm saying. They used the purchasing power, the procurement power of government to jumpstart a whole new industry in the city limits of Chicago. But guess what happened? Not only is now Chicago becoming a leader in solar panel manufacturing, other technologies, feed-in technologies, fine glass production, et cetera, started to grow and cluster around those. And so there's a multiplier even on those jobs for fine glass manufacturing. Which then leads me to my next point about energy efficiency, retrofitting our buildings. Often when I go give talks about clean energy, I go to talk to people who are very enthusiastic about renewable energy. I mean, religiously enthusiastic. I mean, probably the person sitting next to you, right? You start talking about solar, they get very, very excited. Right? So I talk about the wind stuff, they get excited. I talk about the solar stuff, they get excited. Then I get to this part of the speech. And I start talking about building efficiency. And they go promptly to sleep. They start checking their BlackBerries. And I'll tell you why. When they think about this green revolution, they're thinking about wild stuff. They're thinking about Buck Rogers kind of technologies. You know, they're thinking about George Jetson stuff. You know, they're imagining the green economy. Yeah, man, the green economy, yeah. People are going to have these jetpacks, you know. They're going to be going around putting up solar stuff, man. It's going to be amazing. People are going to be at satellites, you know, taking the big parabolic thing and zapping those rays down to the cities, man. And this is going to be amazing, man, the green economy, you know. It's like, you know, ray guns from space powering. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. The number one piece of technology that we need for this next round is not a solar-powered ray gun. It's a caulk gun. It's a caulk gun. That's the piece of technology that we need right now. Off-the-shelf, existing technologies that can save us tremendous amounts of money on our energy bills and put people to work right now. This is critical. It's not just producing new sources of energy, it's also wasting less of what we do produce, no matter what the source is. Let's talk about buildings for a second. With existing off-the-shelf technology, we can cut your energy bill by 30 to 40%. Right now, which if you're concerned about global warming means you also cut your greenhouse gas emissions by that much if you got a coal-fired power plant. What does that work? This is good work, dignified work, career path work. It's double painting glass so the buildings don't leak so much energy. And producing that high performance glass right here in America, which is now happening in Chicago. They're producing that high performance glass right alongside the solar panels. So they can literally, again, double up, triple up on the economic impact. It's putting in clean, non-toxic insulation, blowing that stuff in. Why do I say clean, non-toxic? Because let's not forget our history. Right? You got to be specific. There was a time, this ain't the first time people thought about, gee, we should do something about energy, right? In the 70s, people said, we got to do something about energy. And we had a round of experimentation where people actually did building efficiency. You know what they did? They put in formaldehyde-laden insulation in people's homes where people lived, and they sealed up those buildings so tight that we got sick building syndrome. Right? They sealed up the building so tight, they saved on the energy, but then they got radon sickness and paid more money on health. Right? Let's not do that this time. We actually have a chance now to do clean, non-toxic insulation and do the work at a high standard where we ventilate it correctly, right? And create even more jobs. Why? Because then you could have new entrepreneurs who come in with new products and new services, offering new ways to insulate. Now they can insulate homes using recycled blue jeans that they've shredded up. They can insulate homes using old magazines and newspapers. So rather than trying to send them overseas to China to then have them come all the way back over here as a Post-it, we can actually use that stuff right here, right? I mean, that's what we do. I mean, some of this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. But we can start, but that's a business. That's a business model right there. And especially as the recycling industries have changed in this new economy, right? If we begin to shred that, the more we think this through, the more entrepreneurial opportunities, the more room for innovation, invention, right? So there's insulation, there's double painting glass, there's replacing those ill-fitting doors. There's taking those old, inefficient boilers and furnaces. In some houses, 30 years old, 50 years old, some buildings. Taking those out and replacing them with new, super efficient boilers and furnaces to save people a lot of money. Or better yet, replacing them with no boiler or furnace at all. And using geothermal, right? Serious retrofitting. All of this stuff that can be done, but here's the kicker on energy efficiency and why I love it so much. And it pays for itself. I'll say that again. People say, we can't do all this green stuff, it costs too much money. Let's just keep paying these high energy bills. Somebody missed an episode, you know, like, hold on a second. You know, I'm from California, but I gotta say, I am a fiscal conservative and proud of it. And I want every dollar that our government spends to do a lot of work, I want that same dollar that's going to be used to cut greenhouse gas emissions to also cut unemployment, right? To also cut people's energy bills, to also cut the crime rate by putting people to work, right? To also cut the asthma rate by cleaning up the air. And green jobs let you do that. Green jobs let you take $1 and do an awful lot of smart work, and that's what we're going to need. Because there's only so many trillion-dollar checks that even Barack Obama can write, you know? I mean, I love him. He's a genius, but even he can't write, you know, $1 trillion check every year to keep us going. We're going to have fiscally conservative, smart, efficient ways to reboot this economy, and building efficiency lets you do it. If you tie your energy savings to your financing, how does that work? Simple as this. Let our utility companies sell us energy conservation services as well as energy. Energy efficiency, what does that look like? You get a bill, I'm gonna make this real simple. You get a bill, your bill says you owe us $100 this month. Pay it. And you notice there's a box at the bottom that says, but if you want to save 30%, check here. Now, most of you, at least the fourth time you see that, maybe not the first time, we'll check. Yes, I would like to save 30%. If our utility companies have been empowered and they have the right relationships, here's where the beautiful thing can happen. 2 weeks later, somebody knocks on your door. It's a young person. They've got a little green vest on, you know. And they've got a little clipboard. Or maybe even got a laptop computer. I know you want a laptop computer for them, Senator. And they knock on their door and they say, good evening, sir, or ma'am. Because they've been well trained. They're polite. Their pants are pulled up. All the way. All right? You say, good evening, sir, or ma'am. I am here to do energy auditing. And you will say to them, I haven't asked for any energy auditing. I can't afford what you're, You say, no, it's free to you. And you'll say, free to me? Yes, you checked the box saying you want to save on energy, and I am here to show you how. And you'll say, well, then come in. And then the young person will walk you around the house and show you all different things you can do. You can change these light bulbs. You can do this. You can make this thing. And you'll say, oh, this is just wonderful. Thank you so much. And then the young person will say, but if you really want to get the full 30%, you need insulation. You need new glass. You need a new furnace. You need a retrofit of this home. And you'll say, that's great, but I can't afford it. I'm broke. I'm saving my money for a flat screen TV or whatever. I don't want to do this, is what you're saying. I'm committed to paying more on my energy bill. I've done it for years. Right? And I don't have any money for this thing you're saying about the retrofit thing. Can't afford it. And the young person will say, au contraire. Well-trained, these young people. Well-trained. Au contraire, mon frère. It will be free to you. And you'll say, free to me? How can this be, young person? And the young person will say, I'm a part of a program that if you just check this box, you don't have to turn every page in the yellow pages. You don't have to go on the internet and figure this out for yourself and spend 3 months frustrating yourself like you've been doing. If you just check this box, people who are also trained will come back to this house in the next 2 weeks, and they will do all this work. And the next energy bill you get, instead of being $100, will be $70. But you'll get charged $85. And that $15 you will pay, that extra $15 you'll pay for 2 to 4 years, and that will pay off that work. And in 4 years, your bill will go all the way down to $70. And what you'll do, you'll give young people like me a job. You'll cut your energy bill. You'll help with global warming. You'll improve the value of your home. And it will pay for itself. That is the green economy. That is the genius of the green economy. That's what we have a chance to build here. For too long, we've seen the green economy as this niche economy, this sort of eco-chic economy. Or if you're from Oakland, Berkeley, eco-freak economy, you know, for people who are either so culturally different from the rest of the country with our Birkenstocks and tofu and whatever else Davy D we have in the Bay Area. Either we're so culturally different that we can do something kind of interesting and neat on the side, or we're so economically different, maybe down in Hollywood, where you can afford to, I'm green, I'm putting a solar panel on my second home, It's like, so, but and you're glad that people are doing this. You say to yourself, I'm glad that those people in Berkeley are doing those things, and those people in Hollywood. I'm not going to invite them over to dinner. I'm not bringing them over to Thanksgiving. They'll start complaining about that dead bird and talking about vegetarianism. So they're not coming to my house, but I'm glad that they exist. It's a good, virtuous thing to have in our country, these green people. And it's an economy that people who want to spend more money can buy into. That's the last century's green economy. I'm talking about a different kind of green economy. Not a green economy only for people with extra money or incentive to spend more money in. I'm talking about a green economy where people can earn more money. Right? Not just a green economy where people can spend more money, but a green economy where people can earn more money and save more money. I'm talking about a green economy that will not be an alternative, but will be the cornerstone for the next American economy. That's what I'm talking about. And Texas can be a leader in that. And you're well positioned. You've been the energy leader for 100 years. You have the opportunity now to be a leader in a new way. Now I want to challenge you to do one more thing. I want to challenge you to decide here in Texas that you're going to build a green economy that includes everybody in Texas. Yeah. That you're going to... And this is the hard part. You want to have a green wave that lifts all boats. You want to have a green wave that lifts all boats, that lets everybody in Texas have a share. the people who got hit first and worst on some of the negative things in the last century's economy. You got to say, we don't want them to benefit last and least for this new beautiful thing that's coming. We want to build a green economy that Dr. King would be proud of. That's the real challenge. You want to have a green economy that says, we don't have any throwaway species. God didn't make any junk. We're not going to just push every other species into extinction. We don't have any throwaway resources. God didn't put all this stuff here for us just to waste. We're going to take good care of it. We don't have any throwaway species. We don't have any throwaway resources. And we don't have any throwaway children either. We don't have any throwaway neighborhoods either. And there's an opportunity to go to the communities that have been left out and make them the center of this. Let's green the ghettos first. Let's say that these communities that need new investment, that need new jobs, it's morally right to go there first, but it's also economically rational, and I'll tell you why. You can't beat global warming without greening the cities anyway. 75% of the greenhouse gas problems have to do with cities. You got to figure out some way to use less energy there, to maybe have more mass transit, to maybe bring the food closer to the plate, to do all those things. That can bring jobs, right? We've got a rural strategy with wind, but you can now bring some jobs into our urban environments. That's a good thing to do. Why? Because it begins to give us the opportunity to be one country again. That's what people are excited about. We did it in the domain of politics to a certain extent. You saw the potential for that. But doing it in the domain of the economy, not trying to win just one day at the election, trying to win every day in the workplace and in our communities. That's the promise of the green economy. And there will be a temptation to say, again, using that old model, sounds good. Good rhetoric. Good applause line. It tends to say, it's economically irrational, right? You're going to say, you're going to hear a voice in your head. Not you. The person next to you will hear this voice. Why should we give these kids in these tough neighborhoods job training dollars? They're expensive to train. They're not job ready. If I've got $10,000, I could train 3 or 4 job-ready people who just lost their job, good folks, and get them out there, or I could take that $10,000 and I could spend it trying to get one of these youths ready for a job, knowing math. We can't afford that. It's economically irrational. We shouldn't do that. And I'll say to you, au contraire. Au contraire. We don't want to train that kid, call him Pookie. We don't want to train Josue. We don't want to train Little Run Run. Because we want to save that $7,000. But if that kid then goes out and does something desperate and foolish, we're willing to put that kid in jail. And then we're not going to spend $7,000. We're going to spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to keep them in jail for 1 year. And then we'll have to do it the year after that and the year after that. And guess what? When you put a young person in jail, you've often put a young parent in jail. Now you've got their children in the social welfare system. We're trying to save $7,000. We're going to wind up spending $500,000 on that kid. I would say that that's the genius of the green economy too. We can't just focus on what we spend. Let's focus on what we save. If we invest in those young people, if we say, listen, we see your possible future is going to cost us a lot of money. We want to, alongside everybody else, give you an equal chance. We're going to have to invest a little bit more in you, but we're willing to do it. And the reason we're willing to do it is because we can't just have a green economy based on reclaiming thrown away stuff. We want a green economy based on reclaiming thrown away lives and opportunities too. And we're going to spend a little bit extra money on you to give you a chance. And we're going to hold you to a high standard. And you've got to work. We're not talking about welfare. We're talking about work and the dignity of work and the challenge of work. But we believe that if we create green pathways out of poverty to prosperity for you, that we will not only beat pollution, we can beat poverty too. and we can be one country doing it. Now, the opportunity to do that is deeply embedded in this green economy. It's the redemption not just of our technological genius and our economic leadership, but of the unfinished business in America that I think we can get done in this century. So with that, I want to just say to you, I hope you forget everything I just said. I hope you don't do any of it, because it'll let California gobble up all this opportunity. I got a lot of kids in Oakland I'm worried about. But if you don't forget, if you add it to what you already know, if you stand up for what's best in Texas, you stand up for everybody in Texas, and say you want Texas to lead and Texas to lead together, you will do something even greater than what we've been so proud of President Obama for doing, bringing America back to its best self and all that kind of stuff. Politicians have been talking about, let's bring America back, take America back for a long time. If you do this work I'm talking about, and then we're all here to talk about right and well, we're not just going to take America back. For the first time in a real long time, we will take America forward. Thank you very much.